Welcome back to the next video. In today's video we will learn how to use GraphQL with Apollo server version 4 to make GraphQL request. So if you don't know what GraphQL is, it is kind of like alternative to REST APIs, and it helps us. So in REST APIs we have get, post, put, delete, write, patch as well, but in GraphQL we only have queries and mutation. So queries is something like get request, which we have in REST APIs. So queries of GraphQL is kind of like get request of REST APIs, and a mutation of GraphQL is kind of like put, patch, delete, post, those kind of thing. Okay, so also the other advantage of GraphQL is it will only give you the data which you require. So there is no overfetching or underfetching in GraphQL. And third important thing is there is only one API endpoint. There are not multiple API endpoints. So let's get started. So firstly, I will explain you through a Node.js server. So I'm using Node.js. So yeah, here you can see inside my package.json. Firstly, these are all the dependencies. So Apollo server is a dependency. I'm using version 4, and I'm also using CORS. Currently CORS is not working for me. I don't know why, but I'll once I figured it out, I will let you know in the comments, or I will make a separate video about this. Next, I'm using .env. This is only for because I want to create environment variable. So here you can see in .env I have my Postgres. So I'm using Postgres. So all those Postgres env variables are kept inside this .env file. Next, I'm using Express and GraphQL as well, and this pg-h storage for Postgres, and sequelize is an ORM database. It is an ORM which helps us to do database operations. So first I will show you what I have done. So inside model I have created this user.js file. So I have one user which will have an ID, a name, movies, it has likes, it has is male, whether he's male or not, and it has money as well. So I wanted to cover different types of data types which are in GraphQL. Now these are sequelized data types. Okay, so here the type is integer and auto increment is true, allow null is false, that means it is a requirement and it is a primary key. Similarly over here it is of type string, allow null is false, and all the other things I have kept is as optional. So allow null is true, and this is movies is an array. So this is how you define an array in sequelize, and this is an integer, this is a boolean, and this is a float. Okay, next here I have defined my database as well. So I have defined this URL inside my .env file. So I'm just referring to this URL. Now if you want to create a Postgres database easily, you can use CockroachDB, like they provide a free tier. Again, I'm not affiliated or associated with CockroachDB in any ways. There is also NeonDB, I guess, Neon Tech or NeonDB, something like that. There is something like something called Elephant SQL as well. So these are the three online free database which I know, which you can easily create an account and get a Postgres URL for that. Next, what I have done is I have created a schema.json file, .js file. So basically also in my package.json, so I have added these two scripts as well, start and dev, which will help us to start our Node.js server inside schema.js. So first forget about this cool, like this was just for my practice. So I have defined the same user which I had defined it on the model for sequelize as well. So again, for ID we have to define something like this. So this is a GraphQL type. Also make sure you install the GraphQL extension as well. So I will show you this extension from GraphQL Foundation, and I think there is one from Apollo as well. So Apollo GraphQL you can also install if you want to. And here you can see I have defined type definition for all the types as well as queries and mutations. So firstly what you will have to do is you will have to use this single tick, and you will have to write hashtag GraphQL. If I remove this hashtag GraphQL, you can see the code formatting is not correct and the extension does not work. So for the extension to work, you will have to write something like this. Now here same thing, id is an data type in GraphQL, so we are directly using id, and this exclamation mark means it cannot be null. Now I know some of you might be thinking, like in JavaScript or in Swift or in Kotlin we use exclamation mark when something is null, something can be null, but here it is opposite, like it cannot be null. So, because even in our sequelize database we had made sure that it cannot be null, right? If you remember, allow null is false for id as well as for name. Okay, so if I go back, that's why I have made this as exclamation. Again, it depends on you. Next, movies is an array of string, so that's what I have defined. Likes is an int, email is a boolean, and money is float. So these are the data types which I have defined in GraphQL. Forget about this code, this was just for my practice. Now you will have to define a query. So I have defined one query called users, which will fetch me a list of users. And what one user look like? So one user look like this. Okay, that's why I'm able to use this. If I want to get a particular user, I can just pass that particular user's id and I can get a particular user. Similarly for mutation, here I am deleting a user, it takes an id. Sorry, this should be a user. I don't know why I wrote it, like I think a typo mistake from my side. And here while adding a user, so if you want to pass multiple inputs, you can separate this by comma, but a better way would be to add an input type. So something like input, add user input. This name can be anything, and here I am adding name, likes, movies, email, and money, and from this only name is required, everything else is optional. So it depends on you. Next, inside index.js, if you see, firstly I have also set the type equal to module, so that I can use ES6. So if you see my package.json, I have set the type as module as well. Also I have shown this is not required. Okay, this is also not required because I am not using TypeScript. Yeah, I have already shown you this as well. Okay, next I am importing .env because I am using .env files, and here so this is the .env, this one, and inside index.js I am extending Apollo server. This express middleware I think is only required for cores, that's why I have to use it. There is something called standalone server from Apollo as well, but I'm not using that because of cores. Again, I have not able to figure it out, the cores issue, because when I was trying to call this queries and mutation from a web app, I am still facing issue. Once I have resolved it, I will let you guys know about it. And here inside my type defs, I have defined the type definition files as well, imported. Then I have imported sequelize, I have imported user, then this is cores dependency. I have also imported Apollo server plugin, drain HTTP server. Again, this is for cores, and I have imported express as well as HTTP. Next, inside resolvers, firstly is the query, right? So first is our getting all the users. So if you remember, this is our first query of getting users. That's what I have defined over here. And how to get all the user from sequelize, you will have to write user.findAll and return all the users. That's how easy it is. Next, to get a particular user. Okay, so make sure the name is same. So here you can you have defined it as user. Make sure you define it user over here as well. And it takes like whenever you define a query, it takes a parent, arguments, and context. And if you remember, we have defined it over here that it will take an id. So that id we will get from args, which is arguments. So I'm getting that id, and to find a particular user by an id, you have to use find one inside sequelize. This is a sequelize model. If you remember, we have imported it from over here, and then we return the users whichever are present. I think this should be user instead of users. Okay, next is mutation. Again, this is for deleting the user. So if you see my schema.js, for delete user, same name, and it requires an id. So delete user, same name. Again, I am getting the id by args.id, and to delete a user you have to call user.destroy. And then again I am doing find all and returning all the users back to the like back to the developer. But if you don't want to return all the users, that's fine as well. Again, it depends on you, but then you will have to change this as well. And for adding a user, I'm adding a particular user, and again I'm sending back all the user, but if you want, you can only send back that particular user. So here, as you can see, I'm adding a user, and if you remember, it takes an add user input. Now how to get that? For that, you have to define args.user, and where did this user came from. So if you see, this thing has to match, and it takes name likes movies. So name like movies, which you have defined it over here, and here you can create a user something like this, name like movies. Okay, and here I'm just again finding all the users and returning it back. And this is how you start a server. Sorry, this is for sequelize syncing. So if you enable sync on, it will automatically create tables for you. So it automatically created the user table for me. I didn't have to write create table, table name, all that stuff. And here we are creating our express server object, passing it to our HTTP server, and from that we are creating an Apollo server. We are passing the type definitions as well as the resolvers, and here we are starting our server. And also I'm using this app.use course, so I'm allowing this origin, like this is where my from where I was accessing this is where my web app was located, and from where I was accessing my GraphQL APIs, but I don't know, it didn't work for me. And here I'm just created a promise for listening to our server once it has started, and here I'm printing out a console log. Now what I'll do, because I have made some changes, I have not installed NodeMon, that's why I'm starting the server again. But once the server has started, so I will show you from the start. So here you can see, you can find all the documentation over here. Now if how to query it. So if you remember, we had this query of getting all the users back. Okay, so I'll write something like this, query. Okay, now this name can be anything. You can write something like get all users. And also how to get this, like you have to go to your port, localhost colon your port number / GraphQL. Okay, next just space control space bar, and it will tell you what all queries are present. So I want this users query, right? Just press it, and what all fields you require from the users query. I will require, I think I will take the name, and I'll take the email, and I'll take the ID as well, and then I'll call get all users. Now this user is already present because as part of my development I had already created this user, but you may not have any user, so you will have to run a mutation. So I'll just open one more tab. So I'll just type mutation add user. Again, this name can be anything, and again I will space control space bar. I'll click on add. It tells you what all mutations are present inside your API, like inside your app. Like it is very smart about that. So it helps us to avoid typos. So I'll just click on add user, and it also provides you this add user input, right? So now this add user input takes a user, which in turn takes, so I have defined it over here, so I won't type it again. So I'll just copy paste this, and I'll put it over here. Okay, so these are all the variables. Okay, why is it complaining? User is not allowed. Okay, for now I'll just press get the name. Okay, so here you can see it takes the user input, and here we have defined our user. Okay, inside the variable section. Now I will just change this name to don't know, Virat. Okay, and I'll keep everything else as same. The ID is automatically generated. I'll click on add user, so it has added the user. And if I try to get all users again, here you can see it has able to fetch Virat as well. So yeah, now if you want to delete the user, I have already created a query for that as well. So I had just, so this is the ID for Virat, right? So I'll copy this, and this is for deleting a user. Again, this, instead of first, you can write anything, whatever makes sense to you, and for delete we directly pass the ID, right? So I'll just paste it over this Virat's ID over here. I'll click on this, okay, and here you can see it is trying to run first. If I click over here, it tries to run second. So just click on this. Inside a single tab, like, you can define multiple mutation, multiple queries in the same tab as well. So I'll click on first, and here you can see it has deleted the user, and now the only remaining user is Rohit. So if I try to get all user again, so here you can see it is again getting only Rohit back. If I want to get only a particular user, so suppose I have this ID for Rohit, right? I will copy paste it, and this is how you get a particular user. So this was getting a particular user, so I'll just paste the ID for Rohit, okay, and I'll click on second query. So here you can see I can get it, and here as you can see I'm just asking for ID and name. That's why it's only giving me ID and name. If you want more fields, you can add it over here as well, like, I don't know, maybe movies also, I guess. So movies are null for now. So yeah, that's it. Thank you for watching. Bye.